Thanks for taking the time to come and hear me say a few words about corrugated packaging. I've got quite a few slides. We're going to go through them fairly quickly. I want to give you a brief background to what corrugated packaging is, and then we'll look at some of the developments in the industry, in the machines, in the company, in the product development, and so on. So first of all, who are we? Just very quickly for your information, if you're not aware of us, Confederation of Paper Industries is the leading trade association for paper and packaging in the UK, and we represent the recyclers, we represent the paper mills, and we represent the corrugated packaging producers. We have 90% of the industry in our membership, representing some 6.5 billion, and we represent about 25,000 employees. I won't dwell on this. We stand for everything a trade association does, bring the industry together, support the industry, be a voice to government, so on and so forth. Particularly today, it's my job to make sure that as many people as possible appreciate the benefits of packaging, and specifically the benefits of corrugated packaging. So what are we going to cover? Over the next 20 minutes or so, a very brief review of the role of packaging. I don't want to go into any detail because I hope if you're here, you know why we use packaging. I'm going to look at the background to corrugated itself, a sustainable resource, eminently recyclable. And then the main part of the presentation, I'd like to go through the retail and market trends we're facing as a country, as a society, across all of the world, and then the innovations in the industry itself. So, why packaging? I hope none of this is new to you. Packaging has been demonized in the press. We're constantly hearing there should be less packaging. Well, packaging has an important role to play. It's fundamental. None of us could get the goods we want in the stores or to our homes without packaging. It has a fundamental role to protect the products, and it has a fundamental role to inform the customer. Legal, regulatory information, or brand and market information. Packaging is fundamental. We take for granted that we can have products from anywhere in the world delivered to our home, and the supply chain for packaging in the Western world is so well developed that damage is down below 3%. In the developing world, in the third world, supply chain damage, I've said approaches 50%, it often exceeds 50%. There is a lot of food wasted in the developing world because it goes off, because the packaging supply chains aren't good enough. So I offer the suggestion that one answer to the third world's problem of food shortage might in fact be more packaging, and not, as many people think, less packaging. So, on to corrugated itself. You're all familiar with a corrugated box, two flat layers, the inner, the outer, and the wiggly bit in the middle, which we call the fluting. In the UK, we use about 2 million tonnes of paper to make about 4 billion square metres. It's very difficult to picture what 4 billion square metres is. I don't know what the land area of this country is, but 4 billion square metres is clearly a large amount. But that just represents the fact that people want to buy stuff. They want it to arrive in good condition, and if you want that, you need good packaging. Invented in about the 1870s, Albert Jones, who got the first patent, and it's gone on from there to become the world's favourite packaging material. We start from trees, of course. Paper starts from trees, an eminently renewable resource, and based largely also on recycled fibres. As we'll come to in a moment, typically a box made in this country is 75% recycled fibre, just 25% new virgin fibre, which you always need. Paper fibres get shorter in the recycling process. You always need an input of new fibres. But when we take new fibres, it's from FSC or PEFC accredited forests, and very often we use sawmill waste or forest thinnings. So even when the paper industry is using virgin fibre, it's often using the offcuts and the waste from other people's industry. When you use a corrugated box, it can be any size. You want certain size today and a different size tomorrow, that's not a problem. Some other packaging formats are a fixed size. When you reuse them, it may not always be the size you want. A corrugated cardboard box is always the size you need. It is always eminently space efficient in warehouse and in transit. and it brings great advantages with versatility. It doesn't just have to be a brown box, it can be a printed box. It doesn't have to be a box at all. It can be point of sale display. It can be the new concept of shelf-ready packaging. The industry itself is very high-tech. I'm going to return to this in a moment. We have PhD students doing heat transfer technology. We have an excellent knowledge of the supply chain, and there's a lot more knowledge and experience within the packaging industry, within the corrugated packaging industry, than a lot of people think. We're always telling the customer, please speak to your supplier, explain to them what it is you want, and you'll find that they can design a better box for you. And we'll look at how they do that in a moment. Branding is fundamental. Modern society, the decision made at point of purchase, the attractive colours that you can put on a corrugated box really make a difference. And the boxes there, I've chosen pictures of fruit and veg. That, I would suggest, looks much more attractive and is much more likely to get the attention of the customer than an alternative in perhaps plastic. At the end of the life, we all know you can recycle corrugated. Not many people know just how much of it actually is recycled. More than 80%, I'll say that again, more than 80% of the corrugated in this country is recycled. Now, we calculate that based on what is available for recycling. Some countries compare what they collect compared to what they make, and if they are then a net importer of packaging, it becomes a very unfair figure. We compare what we collect with what we know is available in the marketplace, and 80% of what can be recycled is. It's an extraordinarily high number, and we're well ahead of regulatory targets. As I mentioned earlier, 3/4 of the fibre in a box has already been recycled, and it's very common to have a box made of 100% recycled fibre. And the recycling loop is so good that fibres can be recycled and back on the shelf in a new box in just 14 days. I mentioned earlier that we have 4 billion square metres of board in this country. Very difficult to understand what that is. So to try and put some understanding to the recycling, what I've said here, as you can see, is that an area of board the size of Greater London avoids going to landfill every 4 months because of our recycling rate. So, enough about what corrugated is. Let's touch briefly on some of the market trends. This shouldn't be too new to you. We all know what's happening in the social, in the economy around us. A drive across all of industry for increased efficiency. Part of the reason we're here at the show today is to learn about process efficiency. Every business is looking to be leaner and more efficient. And behind that, we're also trying to be now more ethical and environmentally friendly. And we've got terms like sustainability and circular economy, and I would suggest that corrugated fits into that very well. Packaging has been demonised for a long time. People have said there should be less packaging. But in fact, the real environmental damage is in the product wastage. I've said food waste here, but it could be any product waste. If product gets damaged before it gets to the consumer, the environmental impact is typically 10 times greater than the packaging. The packaging is a 10% investment and insurance, if you like, to make sure that the 90% gets there in good condition. And society as a whole takes it for granted that when they order something through Amazon, or when you see something on the shelf in the supermarket, you expect it, quite rightfully, you expect it to be in perfect condition. That's largely down to the packaging. People are starting to realise the role that it plays. Big changes, of course, in social media, no surprises here. Everybody's got a smartphone now, everybody goes online, everybody can get home delivery. Facebook, Twitter, it's a very, very fundamental change to the way we live our lives. I work with some senior executives who are of an age where they don't really appreciate Twitter and Facebook, and I try to explain to them it's a major, major shift. It's not just a move from fax machine to email. It's like the invention of television. It's like the invention of the radio. It's a real big change. Social groups like Mumsnet bringing pressure. Something trends on Twitter, it brings pressure. Big corporates have to respond to this sort of thing. And everybody now, as I've said, everybody can use the internet for their home deliveries. Retail stores are changing. Top left is the typical out-of-town store, the hypermarket, the supermarket, and bottom right a corner convenience store. More people are using the convenience store now, and that means people are shopping more often, smaller amounts. It means that we in the packaging industry have to think about how we package things for that smaller store. And part of that change is shelf-ready packaging. It's not very new, it's been around for a few years. The idea that instead of the shop worker taking a brown box out of the back of the store, putting on the shop floor and decanting the packets, the bottles, whatever it is, loose onto shelf, instead of that, you've got a box such as the one on the right. You'll all have seen them in the store. Instead of a brown box that is emptied and then go for recycling, that shelf-ready packaging goes straight on the shelf. You tear off the top with perforations, or you remove perhaps some cling film or stretch wrap, and the package goes straight on shelf. Retailers told the packaging industry the last 100 metres is where we slow down. We can shift products all across the world, and then we come to a grinding halt in the last 100 metres because of this need to decant. Shelf-ready packaging was the answer. That's been in stores, in supermarkets for some years, but as we see a move to convenience stores, we're now thinking about how you do shelf-ready packaging for the smaller shelf, the different format in those convenience stores. I've already said that we all have a smartphone in our pocket, we all use it, we can all go online at a moment's notice to compare prices. Every retail store knows that you can stand in their aisles, compare the price in their competitors. That's taken for granted now. We're becoming much more savvy, but the fact that we have these smartphones brings such great opportunities. QR codes, so you can use your phone to jump straight to a website to provide more information. Augmented reality, so you can have, well, augmented reality is common for games or for information. You can just add information via the screen. And then there's something else as well, conductive inks. Now this scares me slightly. There's possibility now to have conductive, electrically conductive inks in a carton. So you could have some cereal on shelf printed in an electrically conductive ink. You can have induction in the shelf which interacts with that conductive ink. The shop recognises you from your phone, knows that you bought Kellogg's cornflakes last time, so as you walk past, that packet of Kellogg's cornflakes could light up. Or a voice on shelf could say, "Hello, Mr. Barnetson, are you here to buy some more Kellogg's cornflakes?" That Big Brother thing bothers me slightly, but that sort of thing, society allowing, could be with us in the next few years. So those were social trends, and now to innovation within the corrugated industry itself. That's a modern machine. Not the dark satanic mill that people think it is. A corrugated machine is clean. They're often producing for food packaging, so they have to meet very strict BRC-IOP hygiene regulations. That's a typical machine nowadays. Very clean, very efficient. Another part of the same factory, a converting machine downstream, again, clean, efficient. This clean, efficient packaging factory now brings a number of developments. Firstly, papers are lighter. The technology that goes into paper making means we can make paper just as strong, but lighter. And we've seen a 10% reduction, 2004 to 2015, a 10% reduction in weight, with no change to the strength. We've reduced our carbon footprint by reducing the energy, by becoming more efficient, by using less material. We've got the carbon footprint down, 16% reduction in that same period. And we're bringing in new fluting grades. I mentioned at the beginning the fluting is the wiggly bit in the middle. You get different sizes and shapes according to what you need. Some are good for top-down compression, some are good for compression from the outside. But importantly, if you know corrugated, fluting is given a letter, A, B, C, and E, and so on. A new grade has come in between what we call B and E flutes, which gives you the same strength in a smaller box. Resource efficiency. An example of the way that our board grades have gone down. This is the typical weight of corrugated board in grams per square metre. Back in 2004, we were up at 530, 540 GSM. By 2015, we were down below 475. Doing the same job with less material, fewer resources. So a few examples now of development in the industry. Couple of product developments, and I'm grateful for the two companies involved here, permission to use these examples. Top right, a new product called Wool Cool, a corrugated box using lamb's wool as an insulation. Very new, very novel. Wool was a waste product. There was more of it than the farmers could use, so an innovative entrepreneur spotted that you could use it as insulation. Corrugated, wool in the middle, and I'm assured that the thermal properties are better than polystyrene. Miller have what they call their cool box. You buy the box of beers in the supermarket, you take it home, the box opens out. You can put water, ice water into it, and for the summer barbecue, it becomes its own ice box and remains, when you're done with it, recyclable. Process efficiency. We've seen product development, now process efficiency. I said earlier that customers are encouraged to speak to their corrugated suppliers. There's a lot of design expertise, there's lots of technical know-how in the industry. And here's an example given to me by one of my member companies. 6 products, 6 small boxes, could be anything. Do you stack them 3 by 2 or do you stack them 2 by 3? The customer said, well, what difference does it make? And the corrugated supplier said, well, we do it one way, we'll use 0.376 of a square metre. We do it the other way, we use 0.352. We can use less board and save you 7%. And that saving of material became a cost saving for the customer. Working together, tell us what you want. You, the customer, tell us, the supplier, what you want, what's the package going to go through. Tell us early on. So often I hear from my member companies that the customer went through years of product development, a new bottle, a new jar, a new product, a new something, and at the last moment, 6 weeks before it was to go out to sale, oh, can we have a box for it? And the corrugated industry said, if you'd come to us sooner, 2 millimetres less here, 6 mil something, a different orientation, we could have saved you hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's always just about communication. Final example on developments in the industry, and I put this in specially for today's show, process efficiency. The customer, this was one example of a customer coming to the industry and saying, how can we work together and be better? And I'm grateful to Paulie's for permission to use this. One of the leading suppliers of fruit and veg in this country, they spoke to their supplier. Jointly they invested in new machines. The net result was a much faster throughput rate, greater efficiency, less wastage, and an availability to have more styles and more designs. Everybody won. And Paulie's say, as you can see, we pride ourselves on delivering a first-class service, and Corrugated is playing a significant role in helping us achieve that aim. So that brings me to the end, leaving a few minutes for questions. Invented in about 1871 by Albert Jones, we may be 150 years old or so, but we are still very forward and innovative. I hope I've showed you with the images, it's a clean and efficient industry. There are lots of new developments and ideas coming through. We bring supply chain advantages to the customer. Branding, you can print in a variety of designs, and with digital printing, it's all getting faster and more efficient with less downtime. We bring space efficiency in warehousing and transit because you can have a box of any size at any time, and it all amounts to cost savings for the customer. All of that in addition to, I would suggest, the best environmental credentials of any packaging material, the highest recycling rates, a renewable resource, and always seeking fewer resources. I've given you a number of case studies. I hope you found them interesting. Benefits for the customer, cost savings, and optimization of board. So that's it. I hope you found it useful. We've got some time for questions. I hope you now agree that there's more to corrugated than just a brown box. Thank you.